We're talking to Dr. Jamie Merritt, and the topic is the Nashville Metropolitan Education Association. And of course, Dr. Merritt, let's see if we can deal with some of the concerns that members of your organization have in reference to the recent recent suggested cuts in terms of the elimination of schools and et cetera, et cetera. What are some of the concerns that you have?
I guess the biggest concern is the document that the school board or the administration presented to the school board cuts things close to children and people. Our position has always been to cut things rather than people, that people are important. And to keep the cuts as far away from children as possible. You know, in the past, this district, this is not the first time this district has had to make cuts, but in the past when they made cuts in a manner that protected children and neighborhoods. And our greatest concern is that the cuts that they're talking about are detrimental to children and neighborhoods, communities.
And so it's a real concern that that have been voiced by members of your organization.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. The other concern really does involve money. When you talk about freezing the salary scale, and I'm sure you're aware with the BP formula, the lawsuit the small school districts had that is equalizing salary across the state.
Okay.
The surrounding counties' salaries are going up. If we freeze ours, in effect, this school district will be recruiting for the surrounding counties because people will go where they can make more money. People don't go into teaching to get rich, but people in teaching have families too, and they have to, you know, a loaf of bread costs the same thing for a teacher as it does, you know, for the director of school at $200,000. So they have to protect their families as well. So it's not about not wanting to do things for the children, but at the same time you have to be competitive, and there are things in this budget that can be cut.
You think that the attempt has been made to cut people, cut at people rather than cut at things? Exactly.
PE teachers, arts, you know, those are things that are essential to a well-rounded child. Obesity is a major issue. I heard a gentleman from the American Heart Association speak. I mean, you know, do not cut out physical activity for children. Those things are very important.
But those are some of the proposed cuts that would come about as a result of what
from the administration, the proposal that they gave to the Board of Education. I guess my biggest concern is that the cuts are punitive in nature toward children. And I realize that the school board and others were very disappointed, I included, in the fact that the sales tax referendum did not pass. But you can't punish children for the actions of adults. And these cuts will punish children.
Well, it seems that there's so much that is anticipated in terms of the cuts that there ought to be some kind of consciousness throughout the city, and especially throughout the education community, of trying to at least come up with some kind of plan that can provide the resources that we need. You know, I don't think that we have had enough resources to begin with before we started, we found ourselves in the situation that we're in. And I'm not here to advocate about a property tax or anything like that, but what we're talking about something that is very, very important, and that's education, you see, and it's still true, as you know, pay now,
or pay later. That's right. And it's cheaper to educate than to incarcerate, as you well know. I think the community felt that money was not being spent in a fiscally responsible manner. And I know this school board talks about being transparent and clear, but they talk about it more than they are. They need to communicate to the community what is actually going on, because, and then of course historically tax increases have been gotten on the backs of children, and people are tired of you coming back to them saying it's for the children, and then it ends up being later for something else.
And so there's the whole possibility of perhaps doing another tax, sales tax or property tax, and that's almost off the board. Is that what we're saying?
I wouldn't count on it. You know, it's hard for people to vote a tax on themselves. That's very hard. I think that was probably a one-shot deal, and it came at a bad time. It didn't start out a bad time, but after Hurricane Katrina and gas prices escalated, it just was a bad time. It ended up just being an unfortunate circumstance.
Well, no, it seems that if we've sort of painted ourselves into a corner in reference to this, what about the lottery now?
Well, that's higher education.
Yeah, I know, but that's what I'm about to suggest here. That, and I know that Mr. Bredesen has done quite a number of things in terms of trying to get some of that money down to the Head Start pre-K area, and I'm not suggesting that we need to take, but would that be? Is there some method that we might be able to use to get into some of that money?
Well, the authors of the bill were clear when the lottery was passed that it was to be for higher education. Of course, I hear the argument often: if we can't get them, through through K-12, then how they'll never get to higher ed. So, and I think that's a legitimate argument. And I guess that's the good thing about our association. We're a united professional organization, and we are the local MEA, and we have TEA and NEA. So the state association has lobbyists on the hills all the time looking at those things and trying to help lobby for the best possible. Now, that, to my knowledge, is not on the table at this time, but maybe at some point that money could be moved.
That is okay, but the fact remains that you need a lot of money.
Exactly.
And that unless you have get some more money than you have, that you're going to have to cut back on the services that probably are not full services across the board as it is now. And now you're talking about cutting back on that, and so it's going to be a pretty detrimental thing for the entire educational community, isn't it?
Oh, it's going to be hard. There's nothing easy about what we're going through, but teachers are resourceful. I mean, we can focus on achievement, language X. Those are just materials. Teachers are where the rubber meets the road. I don't remember the book I used in first grade, but I remember my teacher.
Good.
She made all the difference. So, they're not going to remember that it was focused on achievement or language X or some other program. They're going to remember the teacher. So for me, keeping the teacher for the child and the continuity in the community is the issue.
How many teachers, over the last half minute we have here, how many teachers are we talking about in the metropolitan school system?
Approximately 5,200.
5,200. So, you
somewhere between 52 and 50. It's either 52 or 57.
But you've got a large core of individuals here that you represent.
Absolutely.
And of course, we'll be back with our audience following this very, very short commercial break. We're talking to Dr.